morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this warm Saturday morning for our education conference to talk to you about university applications. Just like to introduce myself. I'm Fawzia Hart. I'm Director of Operations at Migrant Leaders. And what I'd like to do today is firstly just to ask you all to make sure your name is in your Zoom setting. If you're not showing your name, I think everybody is. That's just so that when we want to ask you a question, or if you're asking a question, we know what to call you. And the other thing I'd like you to do is just to test the chat. If you could tell us where you're joining us from in the chat, what subjects you want to study at university, and where you want to study at university, that would be great. And the final thing I think I want to say is if you have any questions for any of the speakers, please put them in the chat, and as each speaker finishes, we'll offer time to ask questions, and we'll also have a time for questions at the end after all the speakers. Okay, so bear with me just 1 second. And first of all, what I'd like to start with is just to kind of offer some apologies. We had actually got an expert speak on university applications, specifically to talk about the new university personal statement, the structured approach. Unfortunately, that speaker's had to drop out. So I did a little bit of research. So I'm going to talk you through my findings and some of the guidance that I've picked up from my reading. So essentially, the main message that I want to convey to everybody is that the purpose of the personal statement remains the same. The only thing that's changed is the structured approach to the questions. And that change has come about because UCAS wanted to be clearer about what sorts of information they were expecting from students, in the hope of sort of levelling the playing field for everybody, where some people might have got guidance on how to fill out the UCAS personal statement and others might need a little bit more clarity on what's expected. So I know that Abdullahi is going to include the actual questions in his presentation later on. So I'm not going to include those here, but they are in a document that I'll be sharing with you later on, if you haven't already seen them. What I am going to do is just talk around the 3 questions and give you a little bit of an idea about what it is that the universities are looking for. So question 1 is really looking to find out about the motivation that you have to study the course that you're applying for. So the sorts of things you want to include are what makes you passionate about the subject that you're applying for. You need to be able to demonstrate a depth of interest through relevant activities, and also a little bit about your future goals and how it links to the course. Is there a fit between what you want to do and the course that you want to study? The thing about the answers is that they need to be specific, direct in relation to answering the question, and also concise, because the overall number of characters that you've got for your personal statement hasn't changed. It's still 4,000 characters. Question 2 is looking about how you're looking to find out how your achievements and skills have prepared you for further academic study. So for this, you need to draw on your academic achievements, for example, topics, modules, projects that you've worked on that have inspired and shaped your views. You can include wider reading, any research that you've done, or any additional studies that you've undertaken. Important thing here is to remember to show the impact of your studies. So a little bit of reflection on why something that you've read, studied, researched has generated your interest in the course. Yeah. Question 3 is where you can include relevant, with the emphasis on relevant work experience and extracurriculars that you've undertaken, and also personal qualities. What the universities are looking for here is for your potential as an independent learner. So it's important that you include relevant extracurriculars and reflect on how and why they matter for the subject that you want to study. So make a direct connection between what you're including to the course that you want to apply for. Okay. I would share that I think there are three aims for the personal statement. The first one is to demonstrate critical thinking and academic reflection. So if you can weave your academic reading and then a unique view on that into your personal statement answers, that's fantastic. The second aim is to form a logical progression, cohesion, or flow between the answers to the three questions that you're giving. And the third aim, I would say, is to make sure that each sentence serves a purpose. So there shouldn't be any wasted words, there shouldn't be any wasted characters. You've got very limited space anyway, so everything has got to count. Things to avoid: performative writing. So, you know, don't feel you've got to be overly flowery or overly descriptive. Using AI to write your personal statement answers. Use it to check them if you need it to. I mean, you might want to check it for directness. You know, is there a way that I can make this more concise? But don't use it to actually write your personal statement, because universities will pick up on that. We pick up on that in Migrant Leaders for applications for our programme. And so I'm sure the universities will pick up on that as well. Avoid cliches, exaggeration, jargon, lies, and spelling and grammar errors. So check everything. Get somebody else to proofread it for you. You've got plenty of time to start thinking about this and start writing. So make sure you do all the final checks and cover all of those areas before you actually submit your application. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about what universities are looking for. And I've got a little list here, so I'm going to go through it, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards and expand on this if anybody wants to clarify what I might be suggesting. So what are the universities looking for? They're looking for academic potential for the course, for their course. They want to see independent and organised learners with initiative and drive, and they also want to see long-term commitment to the course that they're offering and their university. For the personal statement, it's good to focus on why you're applying for this course, and how your activities have informed and are informed by your interest in the course or topic, the subject that you want to study. They also want to see your suitability for the course, for the relevance to university study, and how you've built your intellect and your character in terms of how, again, it's relevant to university study. So in terms of some of the technical or practicalities that you need to keep in mind, do make sure you know all the application dates. That UCAS personal statement is actually open now, but you can't start submitting until September. For each question, there is a 350 character minimum requirement. So make sure you cover that minimum. Some universities are providing specific guidance on what they prefer in terms of, should you put more weight in answers to question 1 and 2, as the LSE require. They want about 80% of those 4,000 characters on questions 1 and 2, so they are emphasizing the academic focus. Other courses may, especially sort of vocational courses, they may have a different preference. So it's important to look at the specific university guidance. A lot of universities are providing that, not only for the university, but also for the course you want to study. So look at the website for the university and the department that you're applying to. Important to bear in mind that universities will read the personal statement as a whole rather than in sections, and that's why it's suggested that you make sure there's a logical flow, cohesion between your answers, so that you're thinking about telling a story through the three answers. And all the three elements of, all the answers to your three questions matter, but also all elements of the application process. So your personal statement, the teacher reference, the interview if you have one, and work experience if you need it for the course that you're applying for. Some universities have admissions tests, so you need to check to see if that's a requirement as well. And because of this change in the process, I understand that some universities might change. They may move towards having more admissions tests. So again, it's really important check for you to make about that. You want to show a genuine interest in the course and studying that course and the subject at a higher level. If you're going to be having an interview, if that's part of the admissions process, then the interviewers may cover the content of your personal statement. So, two things. Remember to try and provide hooks, so potential topics or subjects for that might inspire them to ask you questions on your personal statement, and also make sure that you're comfortable speaking about the content of your personal statement. Don't go in and then risk being asked, oh, on your personal statement you said this, what's your opinion of, or what do you think about? So make sure you're comfortable speaking about that. And again, all the things that I listed earlier about what to avoid are all the things to avoid as part of your interview preparation as well. It's important not to list things in your answers to the 3 questions. Do try and include some reading and the impact of that reading, whether that's inspired you to study it further, whether it's developed your thinking on a certain aspect, whether it's given you a taste for that subject, if it's a subject that you've not studied before through A levels or BTECs or GCSEs. Make sure you're comfortable talking about the content, as I just mentioned. You need to try and develop a depth of knowledge so that if you are asked questions in an interview, you can demonstrate the different opinions that you're aware of and flexibility in terms of being able to answer questions. And because these are academics that are reading your personal statement, whilst I mentioned earlier, try and connect the subject matter of your course to your future plans. Don't dwell on that too much, because the people reading your application are academics, they're not practitioners. Okay, they're all university academics. Some of the guidance that I've seen in terms of your personal statement is make it personal. Do provide evidence, be honest, write clearly and accurately, and provide some structure and flow to the answers. Again, all things that I've touched on before. And some universities that do interviews may place more of an emphasis on the interview and any tests that they may do, because then that's data that they can verify through their own processes, as opposed to what you've written in the UCAS statement, which is the process for everybody. I think I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to, if there's any questions on that now, please feel free to either put your camera on and ask the questions, or we can cover those in the chat later on. So if anybody has any questions that they want to put in the chat, let me know. If you want to ask your question directly, again, please let me know. No? Okay, well, in that case, what I'm going to do is hand over to Tiwa, who is a recent law graduate who's working now, and she's going to talk you through her experiences of studying law.
Hi everyone. My name is Tiwa, and I graduated last year from the University of Reading. I graduated last year from the University of Reading. I did a law degree. So I did that for 3 years. I did the LLB. I'm from London. I'm ethnically Nigerian. My education route was, so did my GCSEs, and at A levels I studied history, government and politics, and sociology. I'll go into that later in my PowerPoint about maybe different routes to law, because there's not actually one specific rule. Like, you don't have to just study certain things. You can kind of study anything, but there's a lot of subjects that will help you with the skills that you would need in your law degree. So currently I am a legal document reviewer at Deloitte, and I am on secondment to a tier 1 investment bank for a project that they're having. So that is where I am right now. So firstly, I'll get into what it's like to study law. So most of the work is mixed with coursework, exams. Some are group presentations. So law, there's a lot of reading, case analysis, essay writing, and group presentation. So you would have to read a lot. There's a lot of case law that you have to be familiar with. And you can really build yourself up to that by, for example, if you're someone that likes reading and things like that, that can push themselves to read for an elongated period of time. Just understanding different phrases and things like that. So I would say reading is a big one that you use, is a big skill that you use in your law degree. Case analysis again is very important as well. Knowing how to analyze cases, knowing how to analyze certain information. Use analysis in a lot of subjects. So for example, as I said, I did history. You can use analysis is a key skill that you use when you're writing essays, just showing that you can just analyze certain text, analyze certain phrases, certain quotes. For example, if you do English, yeah, so essay writing skills is big because a lot of even the exams that you do will be an essay, the coursework that you do will be an essay writing. So essay writing is a big skill. And group presentations, lastly, working collaboratively is really important in your law degree. They do focus on they do mark that, they do assess that that's what they assessed in my law degree specifically as well. Working as a team, knowing how to present, knowing how to speak when maybe you're under pressure, or like speak from the top of your head, making sure that you've learned the work that you're actually going to present. So not, for example, reading off like a PowerPoint and things like that, knowing how to develop what you are saying to make it understandable for other people, maybe that not have studied that before. So that's a key skill that you learn. And also during university, you're able to do things like mock trials, mooting. That's if you're interested in things like that to help develop your legal reasoning. So in my first year, if you have any questions as well, you can just drop them in the chat as well, about university or anything before that. But in my first year, I studied, there is required modules that you have to get through in your law degree, which will be across any university because there's a threshold that you need to meet. So a required module was contract law, criminal law, public law, legal skills, and tort law. So contract law is about contracts between different people, different parties, what amounts to a contract, things like that. So that you would go into that because it's necessary. Every single person that does a law degree would need to know that. Also, criminal law is also a required module. Also in your university that you may choose, it's not necessary that you may not do these in the first year. Some people do it in their third year. So it could be in any of the 3 years, but it is required to know all of these modules and pass all of these modules. So criminal law, it was just about criminal law, the different laws, actus reus, mens rea, which are certain things you would get into as well. Just you will learn about criminal cases, what amounts to which certain type of crime and things like that. Also public law is something that you would also learn. And then legal skills. Legal skills, I'm not too sure if every single university does it, but I'm sure that every university would do it in a sense of introductory feeling or an introductory module. It might not be called legal skills, but it's just about learning how to kind of read cases, learning how to understand cases, learning how to apply cases, learning how to apply the law in certain ways. So it's an introductory module. And then also there is also tort law, which is also something that you would be required to learn. I got an optional module that I could do. So I picked law and society. I was saying first year, there's a lot of modules that optional modules you can pick from. I would say just look at the module briefing and know what you're really interested in, or what you wouldn't like mind learning, or how it can help you. So I did law and society because I wanted to know about how law impacts things like race, gender, so which was really interesting to me. So I picked that as an extra module to do. Then in year 2, you also had to do a couple core modules. So equity and trusts, EU law, land law, and public law 2, which is an extension of the public law 1. And you also do get optional modules as well. I got two optional modules extra in this year. I feel like the more you spend in universities, for example, in year 1 and then in year 2, the optional modules tend to increase because you have covered the core modules. So I chose to do a research project. So I was able to research on generally anything out of the things that they were given to us. So they gave us, I think, race, they gave us gender, they gave us just society as a whole. So, and then you got to pick which question you wanted to do. And then I also did oppression and enemies of democracy. That was oppression, inequality, and enemies of democracy. That was just something that I just thought it was interesting, that I just wanted to learn about outside of the core modules that I wanted to do. And then last year, third year, which was, I would say it tends to be the most important, because you choose all the modules that you want to take. You have a free reign in anything that you want to do. So I would say here, you look at the things that you are interested in, then you would also look at the things that, if you kind of know where you want to go or which type of law you want to go into, I would say this is really important to pick something that aligns with it. So for example, if you are someone that may not have had a lot of legal experience at that time, when you're applying for things like, I'll get into it, like training contracts or vacation schemes, and you don't have a lot of experience, what you choose in university can be a talking point. It can be a point that you can develop on. So for example, if you know you want to go into something like commercial law, taking commercial law shows that interest in it from the beginning. It shows that, okay, even though I'm not sure where I wasn't cemented in where I wanted to go, I had an interest in it. It shows that, oh, I have an interest in commercial law. I studied it in university. So although I would say pick the things that you're interested in, but I think it's also very important to pick the things that you know, that you kind of have an idea of where you want to go into, because it does help with talking points, with interviews, with things like that later down the line. So I chose company law, commercial law, intellectual property law, criminology, technology and internet regulation, and a research writing credit. Normally, I believe you wouldn't take this many modules if you do a dissertation, because it's worth more credits, the dissertation. But I opted out of the dissertation. I did a research writing credit and I did an extra module instead. Yeah, so company law is about basically how what kind of laws companies are built on, what laws they have to follow, if you wanted to start a company, for example, what legal rules you would have to follow, and how things like shareholders and directors and shares inside a company. And then also commercial law is more in my module, we did a client letter and we did a briefing note. So it was very practical. It really got your commercial skills thinking, and you also used a lot of cases. So commercial law, it really developed me in that area, because I knew that I wanted to go into corporate law, commercial law. So that was one of the reasons I did pick company and commercial law specifically, and also actually intellectual property law. Intellectual property law is very interesting. These things about trademarks and protecting an idea and things like that, which is really interesting. And that it does fall under the umbrella of corporate law and commercial law, which is also why I chose it. But I knew my interest, I knew what I wanted to go into. And I feel like when you're during university, you would tend to draw more to certain things that you would see, because, for example, you can start applying for a vacation scheme or a training contract from second year of university. So by then you would kind of know the different routes there are into whatever you want to do. It may seem a bit early, and there is no pressure, because there is so many things you can do aside from a training contract and a vacation scheme. Because me personally, I didn't get either of them, but I am still working within the corporate law umbrella. So there is many, many things to do, but you tend to know what your interests are at that point. I also did criminology. I did criminology because I just wanted just a module that was quite different to the other ones that I was doing. To just broaden my horizon, just see, okay, maybe I would be interested in something like this. And then I also did technology and internet regulation. That was quite a newer module. It was more on things like artificial intelligence, aviation, things like that, just technology and the way we use it in today and things like that, and previous cases, and things like self-driving cars, things like that, which I thought would be interesting, because I believe that it kind of moved with the time. It was quite recent, which is why I picked it. And then I also did a research writing credit, which is similar to, I would say it's similar to a dissertation, but at a very shorter level, because a dissertation is it's a lot of words and it's very long and it's a lot of research, but this is at a smaller level, I would say. You still research. I believe I did mine on artificial intelligence and deep fakes. Just it connected with my interest in intellectual property. I really enjoyed that module, so I drew from there, which is what you tend to do in your dissertation as well. But yeah, I'm sure somebody else would speak on that. Yeah, so if you do have any questions, I'm not seeing the chat, so I'm not sure, but yeah. So I would go on to preparing to study law, so your A levels. Um, there is no specific subjects required, but I do recommend those that the ones that develop critical thinking and essay writing skills. So that could be history, English literature, politics, philosophy, sociology. I studied history, politics, and sociology. But honestly, there is no specific subject that is necessary. But I just believe ones that develop critical thinking, that could be anything, as long as you can draw a comparison to why I draw a connection to why you want to study law, which is what I would say. But there is no specific subject, but that's what I would recommend in terms of just it aligns closely with what you do in law. And I know some sixth form colleges, they offer law as an A level as well, so you could take that as well. Mine didn't, but yeah. Then I would get onto the LNAT, which is the Law National Aptitude Test. Some of you guys may know what it is. Some of you guys might not. So this is required by some universities. I did take the test. It was on essay writing and comprehension. It's not specifically on legal knowledge, so you don't need to know any legal knowledge. They give you a question and they ask you to write your thoughts on it, but not necessarily your thoughts. You need to be able to, for example, have a very balanced argument, but draw your own conclusion. Um, but so I would say there is a lot of websites out there that would help you practice for the LNAT, that will help you practice on the time conditions, because it is a timed test and some universities require it, some don't. So I would say check out the universities that you're applying to, and they will let you know I know quite a few Russell Group universities need it. I know Oxford need it, LSC need it, and UCL, but some don't. Some Russell Group universities don't as well. But I would say, yeah, read articles like The Guardian, The Economist, to develop argument building skills, because that is what the test is based on. It's on the way you are able to argue, but in a balanced way, but still drawing your own conclusion to at the end. So I know Fawzia has spoken on a personal statement. I would just speak specifically on the legal side of it, or the law, if you want to study law. I would say really mention any work experience that you may have done, even if it's just a week, even if it's volunteering, even if it's that you believe that it has the littlest tie to law. I would say still speak about it, still big yourself up on it. What you've learned, what you've drawn from these experiences. Um, talk about your interests, why you do want to study law. I think a big one that was books, maybe what you read. I know I read The Secret Barrister, and I spoke about that in my personal statement about how that led me to want to study law and increase my interest in law. So I would say books is a good one to speak about if you've read any of the books. These are some that I heard are pretty good books to read. So Letters to a Law Student, The Secret Barrister, and What About Law. I would say highlight your academic skills, and your relevant extracurricular. So whether you've been in the debating team, you've been in any leadership roles, whether you're head of year, you're just any leadership skills that you have done, any part-time work you have done as well. You can develop on that, what skills they have taught you, what you've learned, what experience you have built. Sports is a good one to add in. because, for example, if you've been in a sports team, it shows that you can work collaboratively and you work well in a team. Then I would also say that if you have any personal circumstances or educational circumstances that may have affected you during university, because I know you would apply, if I'm not wrong, you would apply with your predicted grades within your personal statement. So anything that may have affected you up till then is really important to put out. Universities are very they do consider things like that. So don't feel shy or embarrassed to say anything you may have been going through. Yeah. So a way to make your application stand out. Yeah, so I would say Fawzia has spoken on these things. Yeah, again, just student leadership, whether you're prefect, house leader, sports again, youth programs, volunteering, mentoring schemes that you've been a part of. Yeah. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would quickly speak on, I thought I had a slide in there, but I'll quickly speak on what I do now as a legal document reviewer. So I review documents, contracts, and I use a lot of Excel to capture information. I work to capture information and put it concisely for negotiators in in my firm. And so I'm constantly reading over 50 contracts a day, working in a team as well, working cross-border. So I work with a lot of the international firms, the international companies, the different hubs, which is really interesting. Yeah, so I am seconded through Deloitte, but I don't necessarily work in Deloitte. So I am seconded to a bank, but it is really interesting, I would say, looking at different contracts, which is just again, it's just another thing you can do with your law degree. So it's not just a straight line. There's a lot of things you can do. So yeah, I would just end off there. And if you have any questions, yeah, just put them in the chat.
Thanks very much, Tira. That was really interesting. It's great to hear both before, during, and after your law studies. And I think it's fascinating for potential lawyers, aspiring lawyers who are amongst our attendees to know, well, this is what you go through to apply, then this is what you go through during law, and actually this is what can happen after and how you apply the learning that you've done over the 3 years of your degree. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sorry, I've just got a little message in there, so I'm just going to respond to that, and then I'm going to hand over to Abdullahi, who again will introduce himself and give his presentation on his studies and university application. Thanks, Abdullahi.
Thank you. So I'll begin sharing my screen. That should be fine. Hello, everyone. My name is Abdullah Hassan. Study accounting and finance at King's College London. So just to start with a little bit about myself, I studied maths, chemistry, and physics at A level. Location-wise, I'm from London, but I am ethnically from Somalia. So I'm from a little poor city somewhere near the Horn, if you can see it. It's probably colder there than here, to be honest. But so I studied chemical engineering before I transferred to study accounting and finance with a year in industry. And my interests are writing. I'll write anything, fiction, non-fiction, blogs. And I love to travel as well. So you can see me on a camel in Morocco. So that's me. And I'll start off talking about how I find studying accounting and finance to be like. So as a broad overview, it's a much more holistic blend of subjects and studies. So it's not pure accounting modules. Neither is it purely focused on maths or even economics. It's a blend of all. So, for example, you got your financial reporting, so that's external accounting standards for financial boards, and as well as management accounting, so that's internal. So that's stuff like budgets that you can give to your managers or profit margins to be able to tell if a company is viable. And you also have other modules like corporate finance, capital markets. So both of those are just more of a wider view on society and the economy and markets. And of course, you have your maths. So the maths that I done, there was a heavy focus on statistics, as well as your differentiation, integration, that sort of stuff. So as a whole, they do contain interdisciplinary modules. And you also have programming, economics, organizational behavior. So it's never too boring. There's always something new each term. So for my first year, well, in terms of module options, first year, you do not get to choose. So it's more like a foundational module list. So just to get everyone up to the same standard. But in second and third year, like Tiwa said, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of other degrees, you get to choose more modules. So I recently chose my second year modules. So there were four out of eight. So that's over half, about half that I got to choose. And this is even more in third year. So you get to choose 6 out of 8 in third year. So in a sense, you're able to sort of build the degree that you want. So I know that with the list that I saw, some people, they might want to focus on econometrics. So that's more going into private equity or investment banking. And there's other modules like asset management or tax, auditing, assurance. So there's a wide range for people that want to niche down into a particular career within the finance sector. So on the right, you can see that's the KBS, the King's Business School. And below that, those are some of the modules that I've done this year, like I mentioned. Okay, so I'll move on from that. So it's probably a bit more important for you guys, structuring your statement. So I do understand that you guys have a new structure for your personal statement, and it's split into three. I think, like Fozia said, it's just to get everybody on the sort of same playing field, because I know that it's not really intuitive beforehand. The old structure wasn't really that specific on what it required, but now it allows everybody to sort of filter what they've done, their interests in the subject through these questions. So you want to have a read, there they are. I'm sure you've seen it. So, like Fozia did say, it just gives your essay a structure, but it does not change what you need to do. And these are some of my tips that I had when I done my UCAS. So, because I done UCAS twice, so when I transferred, I switched universities. So I had to do it twice, so I have a bit more experience than most people. So I have it flow like a story or a blog. And the reason why you want this is that it makes it a lot more digestible. You do not want to sort of just list your experiences. You don't want to tell people your interests. You'd rather show it through listening experiences and sort of weaving them together. And another thing would be, I understand that probably for you or for a lot of people, the hardest part is to start, because it's this big unknown thing. So the best thing that I would recommend for you to do right as you're beginning, just so that you don't sort of waste time in a sense or procrastinate it, just write down everything that you could talk about. So all your experiences that you've done in the past 1 or 2 years, your interests, the stuff that you've read, the stuff that you've interacted with, and then just like I said, filter it through these topics, assign them, and just have a rough draft of how you want it to look like. and then you'll be able to refine it, get feedback, that sort of thing. Also, you want to treat this as a sales pitch, maybe not too much of a sales pitch. You should never mention the words like I or I want or anything like that, but you just have to keep in mind that there's a person reading this. There's an admissions officer whose job is to read personal statements. So with the idea of trying to stand out, I think it would be better for you to just keep the person in mind whilst you're writing, just to make it a bit more easier on their end to make a decision on whether to admit you or not. And also, finally, you want to get as many unbiased perspectives as you can. Your personal statement should never be something that you write, you fact check, and you sort of check for spellings and that sort of stuff, and you just submit it. You should always have somebody read through it. So, for example, your school will likely have a UCAS, a teacher, or even a UCAS person that you can go to, counselor or whatnot, to ask for feedback, ask for advice. And with that in mind, you will have many drafts. I know that I went through maybe each week, I was going back to the teacher and she was reading through it and she was very meticulous about it. Why use this word instead of that word? What does this mean? And I think having another person's perspective allows you to sort of, it gives a third point of view, just so that you don't, in the case that you're writing and it might be easier, some people, their writing style, it makes sense to them, they might not to other people. And I think a third perspective would let you see that. So that's all for structuring it. And in the case of what I did, so these are just the broad subjects that you might want to talk about. So any readings that you might have done, any experiences that you might have had, and any programs that you might be on. So with the reading, I read a few books, but I chose The Psychology of Money. It's just a book about the topic psychology of money, the sort of mindset of the markets throughout the past 100 years, the mindsets of investors through recessions and periods of growth. So a book allows you to mention and build on topics that you might find interesting in a natural way. So rather than just saying that I find the topic of asset management or investment banking to be interesting, you're able to sort of reference a book and then that shows that you're interested in it rather than you just telling them. And this is not just for reading. So you could have a module that you've done online or a more academic book that you've read. So those are the examples. And also what you read does not matter, but what you learn does. So you have to be able to articulate the insights that you gained and be able to word how you engaged with it. And for the programs that I done, I completed University Genius and Migrant Leaders. I'll touch upon University Genius, the story behind that later on. There's an interesting story about how I joined. But I was also part of Migrant Leaders and UIA2 experiences that I done. So because I had the unique situation of applying to UCAS twice, a lot of my experiences were, they had engineering in mind. So when I done the National Grid Work Experience, when I done a Imperial College London like STEM entrepreneurship incubator, but I still listed them when I was applying for accounting and finance. So my advice would be that they do not have to relate directly. Transferable skills and experiences can be included in your personal statement. So do not be afraid if you're studying medicine, but you've had a change of heart. Not that if you want to study medicine, but you now change your mind, do not be worried about, the not being able to talk about the experiences that you've had before. Yeah, and honestly, one of the bigger tips I would have is to apply early. I know that whether you're applying for medicine or you're applying for Oxbridge or not, there will be other students in your year applying for medicine or Oxbridge, and I understand that they have to apply early. So I think it's the 14th of October, if I remember. So whether you're applying for that or not, just sort of reach out to your head of year, reach out to your counselor, and sort of speak to them about the timeline that you have when you want to submit it. Because I know that a lot of schools, they do mock exams in November. So I think the earlier that you submit it, the better. And of course, do not rush, but the earlier, the better. And it will be a weight off your shoulders. And you'll be able to have time to study for your exams and whatnot. Because whilst the personal statement is important, at the end of the day, it's your grades that are going to get you into university. And yeah, do not forget to put emphasis on that. So moving on, here are some key takeaways. Have your statement reviewed and ask for feedback regularly. Like I said, a third perspective is always going to be, it's going to be worth like 100 times more than you rereading or anything like that. If you're worried about starting, just list everything that you could talk about and go from there. Like I said, a lot of people worry about starting. That's sort of the biggest hurdle for a lot of students, and they spend a lot of time sort of imagining a personal statement rather than just starting. So, like I said, just list everything, apply as early as you can. That will be probably the best option for you, because these universities, they do not wait to reach a number of applications before they start giving out offers. If application is really good, even in October, they're known to give out offers, and that just means, you know, the competition's a bit more higher if you were to apply later. Connect with your network for further opportunities. So the reason why I say that is so with the program that I was on, University Genius, the only reason that I was able to participate in that or even knew about it was because I reached out to a program lead that was a lead of a program that I'd done in year 10. And she told me about this program and I applied for it. I was very grateful for that. And that ended up me being the only student from North London out of the entire cohort because everybody else was from South. And that was the main demographic area for the program. So I mean to say that as in, do not be afraid to reach out. I know that you have a lot of time before September, October right now with your summer. So you can reach out and perhaps do something to, if you're lacking in any experiences for your personal statement. And for accounting and finance, look into finance related online courses from Udemy, Coursera, such as corporate finance. And the same also applies for any other degrees. So perhaps computer science, there's always a Python or a Java course to do, or GitHub. And the same for any other degrees. Nowadays, there's always something on the internet and it will give you a lot to talk about. And from the perspective of the academic reviewing your statement, it speaks a lot that you're willing to do a lot of outside learning and get yourself certificated, get a certificate in an online course. That's me for now. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat and then I'll have a look through. Also, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. That's my full name @KCL. You'll find the profile. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Fozia.
Thanks very much, Abdullahi. That was a really interesting presentation, and you gave some really helpful examples there on items that people can include in their personal statements. And actually, one thing you and I do have in common is that we both had to apply UCAS twice. I actually dropped out of an accountancy and finance degree. I ended up doing my social policy degree, but we're talking 40 years ago now, so a long, long time ago. Can I get you to stop sharing your screen, Abdullahi?
Yep.
And there was a question specifically for you about why you switched from chemical engineering. Don't know if you want to cover that now or very briefly, entirely up to you. And then there's another one about what kind of careers are people going into from accountancy and finance.
Yep. So Anne Maria, if I've pronounced that correctly. Thank you for your question. So you asked me, why did I switch from chemical engineering? I think from when I decided to do chemical engineering and from when I went to study, there was a quite large gap in time, and I feel like I changed as a person. So when I did go on to study it, I didn't find it the most engaging or the most applicable to sort of what I wanted out of life. So I sort of looked at my options available to me with my A levels and whatnot, and I pivoted into finance. And so I just applied for accounting and finance. But I also knew with my chemical engineering degree that I wanted to get into finance at the end, anyways. So I thought to myself, I might as well just switch courses and save myself the long engineering degree just to end up in finance at the end. So yeah. You also had another question. What type of careers are people? Yeah, so I'll answer the first part. Yep, so what you said is correct. It's more the broader finance roles. Because on my course and from the people that graduated before me, there's a wide range, honestly. Like you said, investment banking, consulting, private equity, mergers and acquisitions. Um, I think there's a role for everyone in accounting and finance. It's not so much as a pipeline, but it's more like just a broader introduction to the financial sector. Because, like I was mentioning with the modules, you're sort of offered so many to do. Because I know, and I'll touch on your second part. You said that over straight economics. So with straight economics, there's a much more focus on econometrics, maths, economics. And that sort of leads into more investment banking or private equity or data analytics or even quant trading. So that's probably why I just want to keep my options open. So yeah, keep that in mind if you are applying for finance.
Great, Abdullahi. Thank you very much. Really helpful responses as well from you.
Thank you.
Great stuff. So we're going to move on now to Bhavisha, who is going to talk to us about effective study methods. Bhavisha, if you're ready, go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, let me just share my screen. Just give me 1 second, won't be long.
While Bhavisha's sharing her screen, I would recommend people to keep adding their questions in the chat. We will come back there. I know there are some that we haven't covered yet, but we will come back to answering any of those. For example, Mike's question about personal statement writing and Denise's about dealing with interview anxiety. So we will come back to those before the end of the conference. If there are any specific questions for Tiwa or Abdullahi, please do carry on putting them in the chat, and any for Bhavisha as she is speaking as well.
Okay, perfect. Can you all see my screen?
I can see it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. So today I'm speaking about effective study skills. So when I discuss this, it's all about working smart, not hard. So a little bit about me is I'm the founder of a tutoring company called Plus Hero, and I'm also an economics graduate from about a year and a half ago. I'm currently also being mentored by migrant leaders, but I've kind of taken a full circle approach. And so I'm now kind of trying to provide value to something that provided value for me. And I was also an academic mentor at a sixth form most recently, which is smart, not hard. This was something that I actually never had when I was in sixth form. We didn't have a huge emphasis on revision, but luckily now that things are changing and there's a lot more awareness around the importance of knowing about how do you actually study, not just learning. So the whole mission behind Class Hero is to help students work smarter, not harder, so that you can actually have a social life, because that's something that we can kind of change that. Okay, so my story is actually really unique. So I started my GCSEs in year 8, and I wasn't the only one. We did it in a class of, I think there was 30 of us that were doing it in year 8, and at the time I remember being really anxious, and I started off on a D, and through loads of Maths Watch, loads of loads of practice, loads of cramming, I managed to get an A. And then I also did the international GCSEs for maths the year after and got an A star. And the reason I'm sharing my story is because I was kind of a bit overconfident when I was at GCSEs, and I thought, oh, this is easy, got all these A's and A stars, like A levels will be a breeze. But then what worked for GCSEs, I realized didn't work for A levels. And at the time, there was quite a lot going on, and there was COVID as well. So I was the year that had COVID during year 13. And so I didn't actually get to finish, and I disappointed myself quite a lot. And I went from A stars at GCSEs to getting U in my mocks, Ds, Cs, and I just didn't understand why. And so I knew that there were these methods like spaced repetition, blurting, active recall, even growth mindset, but I didn't know how to exactly integrate it. And I first became introduced to specifically spaced repetition by my economics teacher. So I'll discuss that a little bit later on. So as I was saying, why study methods matter is because it improves long-term memory retention. We're not trying to get short-term wins. It's not GCSE. With A levels, the curriculum is a lot bigger. We also want to make studying more efficient. We don't want to study for 8 hours a day. It doesn't actually make sense. Scientists even say that you can only work 4 hours of deep work every single day. So if you're doing anything more, you're just trying to get burnt out, and it's not good for the long term. It's a marathon, I like to call it. It's not a sprint, A levels. It's also to reduce exam stress and increase confidence in the subjects that you're taking. So you can actually enjoy the A levels that you're taking, because it's not just you're doing it because you have to anymore. You've chosen these subjects, so you want to actually enjoy it. So some of these study methods include, as I said already, active recall, spaced repetition, retrieval practice. Okay, so the main ones I wanted to go through is active recall, spaced repetition, and then there's blurting as well, which isn't really on here. But yeah, please feel free to read any of this and note some down. I also want to mention that it does change subject by subject. So for example, active recall is something that would be a lot more of an essay subject, revision technique. Then there's also, same with Cornell note taking. So summarizing what you've read to make sure that's actually going in. The difference between effective and ineffective is also passive versus active. If you passively revise, that's most likely you're just reading a textbook and saying that you revise. And it might make you feel good to say that you revise by reading, but it doesn't actually go in. You have to actively retain the information, test yourself in the moment, ask yourself questions, and then also go through it in a few weeks, which is what we call spaced repetition. So you need a combination of these methods. Yep, so this is actually some of the posters that I took pictures of when I was an academic mentor. I thought they were quite good. I'm more than happy to also send them across. So yep, there's power hour here, spaced repetition, active recall, and then exam practice. So yeah, this is material at spaced intervals, so every few weeks. So a lot of the time, the students that I tutor, they say phrases that just aren't true. Like, I just have bad memory, which is why I'm not able to get the grades that I need, which just isn't true. And even photographic memory, a lot of people think that some people are just very lucky and special because they have photographic memory. And again, there's not actually much evidence that even proves that that exists, from the research that I've done. And so spaced repetition is really important because it allows you to remember things for a very, very long period of time. There's things that I've studied using spaced repetition for my economics A level, which was like 5 years ago that I still remember just because of this technique. And it's not that we want to remember years and years, but at least a year after when you're sitting the exams. So the science behind this is it's based on Ebbinghouse's, I don't think I pronounced that right, but the forgetting curve, which is their psychological model, which explains why people forget content after a few days. So not really why, but more showing you that you will forget it after days pass. So when you say things like, oh, I'll just remember it, I don't have to write it down, it's just not true. You have to think long term. It's actually quite interesting. One of the first things I ever learned in economics was myopia, and myopia means being short-sighted. And it's basically the theory that every human, like humanity in itself, is just very short-sighted. So we don't think about the long-term consequences. We don't think about, hey, I'll just do the homework now, I'll revise and cram later on. So many times I've heard students in year 10 saying, oh, I'll learn the concept now, but I don't really need to put in the work. I'll do that in a year. Like I'll revise and I'll lock in a year's time. It doesn't work like that. We're not robots. We don't just take information like that. You have to see it as a marathon again. So yeah, the forgetting curve demonstrates that memory retention drops shortly after learning, and without reinforcement, most information is forgotten within days. So this helps us reset the curve each time we review, and it improves long-term retention. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, that these methods you do have to apply by subject. So it depends. If we're doing essay-based subjects, if we're doing STEM, if we're doing qualitative, which is about information, quantitative, which is about numbers. So I've written down a few of the methods that I would use dependent on the subject. This is just a few examples. If you have any questions about any specific, let me know. For economics, it's a very much qualitative subject, even though it is mathsy. There isn't actually too much maths involved except basic GCSE maths, which is, yeah, like I think a bit of a myth that people are told that economics is a very, very mathsy subject, which actually isn't too true. It requires no A-level maths. There's just quite a lot of curves, but it's more about rationality. And yeah, some of the tools that I would highly suggest using is, the first one is the Pomodoro technique. So I have ADHD, so this is something that I use, which is when you intensely focus for a very short period of time and then you give yourself a break. Because with ADHD, there's a lot of we're wired to have a lot of energy, and we're kind of addicted to novelty. So if anyone else has got ADHD as well, highly suggest using Pomodoro technique. Our brains are just different. You have to know what works for you. So yeah, when you're using these tools, definitely keep in mind neurodivergency, the way that you work, what time of the day is your most productive. Are you a night owl? Are you a morning owl? Morning bird. Like, you have to think about those things. So as much as people can say, do this, do that, only you know yourself. So that's something I wish I was told when I was younger. I only recently got diagnosed by my therapist, but I think everyone needs to find out what works for them. Don't let someone tell you to do this, and if it doesn't work, then you think that you're stupid. Have some self-compassion, know yourself. Every brain is different. There's no size fits all. Yeah, and create a weekly planner, please. If you don't plan your week, you're planning to fail. You know that quote, what is it? If you don't plan to prepare to fail. If you don't prepare, yeah, that one. I know you know it. So make sure that you actually plan your week. Do it on a Sunday, do it on a Monday. No, not a Monday. Do it on a Sunday, and allocate revision blocks for each subject. And make it realistic. There's no way you're going to do more than 4 hours a week. Let's be honest. Make sure you put in time for social activities, for lunch. Don't burn yourself out before the exam. That's the worst thing you can do. Color code, anything that works for you, put it on the board so you know where it is, and you can see it all the time. And yeah, so when I was an academic mentor at the sixth form team, the three main struggles that I noticed students were having was, one, the ways that you're revising, so passive versus active. If you're revising for 8 hours for each subject every single week and you're still not getting the grades, there has to be something wrong, and you have to be able to identify that. And if it's too difficult, then there are people that you can go to, like tutors. There's even I think the pastoral team at school. So make sure that you are for finding out why exactly am I not getting the grades. Don't be demotivated because you're not getting results. You just have to try a different approach. A lot of the students that say to me, oh, I'm just not getting the grades and I put in 8 hours a week, like I'm done with this, I'm not seeing results. That's a fixed mindset. That's what we talk about at school. Having a fixed mindset is very dangerous because it allows you to be complacent, because you blame your circumstances on external situations. That's not what we want to do. We want to have a growth mindset, which is that if I ask my teacher and I ask them to give me topics or exam questions, or I stay a bit later and I use their active study methods, then I can do better. That's the kind of mindset that we need to have. So yeah, I would say mindset and the way that you're revising is the first struggle, if you are struggling with your grades. The second one is exam strategy, knowing what is the question asking. So especially in economics, they have words such as evaluate, and you have to understand what does that actually mean. So economics is a very nuanced social science, so it requires you to, go through many different perspectives. And then there's also the news that you have to incorporate in. There's a lot of things that that word contains, and you can kind of create a memory bank and also ask your teacher videos as well of what does this word exactly mean? What is the question exactly asking me? Because you can, for example, we've got price elasticity of demand, PED in economics. And if you just write down all of the things that you know about it, but you don't actually apply it, you won't even get half the marks. Economics is a lot about application, as it is with most subjects in A levels. So you have to know what is the question actually asking you. The third thing is time management. Yep. So make sure you're organized, have the planner, set aside time for deep work. If you're doing 8-10 hours, but you're not focused, that's even worse than doing 3 hours of focused work. So make sure that you actually are properly revising in the time that you do have. It's better to do 2-3 hours, 2 to 4 hours than it is to do 8 to 10 hours of unfocused work. And yeah, so this is actually the Flora app, as you can see this picture over here. So it's quite a cute app. If anyone wants to download it, it just helps keep you motivated and gives you a few quotes. And yeah, so the final things that I want to say is there's no size fits all. This should say no size fits all, to be fair. Find out what works for you, really introspect. Ask your teachers, see the way that you answer questions, what exactly is the struggle, identify it, or ask someone if you're struggling. Neurodiversity can affect, so make sure that you experiment, you adapt, make sure you get a diagnosis. If you do think you've got something before the exams, you don't want to do it too late, like I did. Combine methods for best results, so active recall, spaced repetition, blurting, which is where you can search it up as well. I won't bore you, but combine all these methods for getting the best results. Yeah, this is very, very, very key. Focus on understanding, not memorizing. There's a reason why you pick certain A levels, because you were interested in it, because it led to a career that you would want to do. So why would you just memorize? You would actually understand. You would try to focus on understanding. There's this famous quote I think everyone's heard of, but if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself, which is really, really true. Even especially when I'm teaching, and the student asks me why this, and I can't answer it. It's embarrassing. You should try to understand the content. Where is it coming from? How does it relate? That's what makes the learning fun. And yeah, practice regularly, not just before exams. Don't cram. You will be burnt out. You will be tired. You will crash out before the exam. And yeah, your future self will thank you. So always try to act in a way that your higher self will be proud of. So if you think about, oh, I don't want to revise today, think about how good that feeling will feel if you did revise and you get the grades. Again, a bit of economics. It's called the art of delayed gratification, which is part of behavioral economics. Economics is so relevant to everything. Definitely pick it if you are starting year 12. But yeah, this is my personal LinkedIn, which I will put in the chat below. I've actually just posted my economics personal statement that got me 4 or 5, I think it was 4 Ross Group universities. It was from 3 years ago, but it's very relevant now. And even the structure has changed, I know, but it still follows the exact same structure, if I'm being honest. So yeah, if you would like to see my personal statement and gain a bit of inspiration, add me on LinkedIn. I'll put it on the chat below too. And yeah, if you want to check out my website too, and you want to just see where you're struggling, I'm more than happy to give advice about, you know, where I think exactly the root issue is just by speaking. That's what I used to do as an academic mentor. I used to speak to the students for 5-10 minutes and find out where they were struggling, and then give you a few resources, a few tips. And you don't have to continue with my tutoring. You can just book in a session. And yeah, so there's a post to my personal statement, and I'll also post some free MCQs. So if you do econ already, you know what that is. MCQs are multiple choice questions. So this is something that my economics A-level teacher taught me. So whenever you have if you have a textbook and you're reading about, let's say something in economics, what can I think of? Monopolies. So you have to learn everything about monopolies, oligopolies, all of those things. You would write down some really, really basic MCQs, so multiple choice questions. So what is a monopoly? Give an example of a monopoly, show a curve, showing a monopolistic market or something like that. But really, really, really basic questions which help your understanding. You can photocopy them and then just use them in a few months' time. So I've got quite a lot of them for the theory, which I was trying to attach on LinkedIn, but I couldn't. So let me work on that and I'll post that. But you've got my personal statement if you want to add me on LinkedIn. Let me put it on the chat below. And yeah, please think of any questions. I'll give you guys like 2-3 minutes because I spoke really fast. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat, or better, if you could actually unmute yourself, it would be great to hear a voice. If anyone's brave enough, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bhavisha. That was really interesting. And I think it's fail to plan, plan to fail, isn't it? That's the common saying.
That's the one
which
I can say.
You temporarily forgotten, but I you know, we kind of, those of us that have been working for a while, you know, almost have it as our mantra, because you know, preparation is key on many things, and also your personal statement, as I think we've all mentioned. Thank you so much. So Bhavisha, if you can keep your microphone on, because there were a couple of questions specifically for you. How did you show your passion for economics in your personal statement or interviews? And similar to the question that Abdullahi got in terms of flexibility of career choices, do you want to speak about those a little bit?
Yep. So the first thing is passion, which I'm going to write down because I don't want to forget, and flexibility. I'm actually just going to show my personal statement, if that's okay, Fozia.
Of course.
Let me do that.
I would say, while Bhavisha's just doing that, it is important not to plagiarize or copy other people's personal statements. So whilst it's very generous of Bhavisha to share her personal statement, use it as guidance and not as material. Bhavisha, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So haven't actually seen this in a while. Straight away with passion. Passion is not something that you can fake. So I think the only way to actually show it with evidence is by reading books. So I chose to read political philosophy. So the degree that I actually initially chose was philosophy, politics, and economics. So I have a book called Political Philosophy, and I gave in my own ideas. So I said, this offered a succinct yet enlightening, right? So the intrinsic link between philosophy, politics, and economics. And so how does philosophy relate to economics? So the my major was economics, but the minors were philosophy and politics. And so I related it right back to economics. So one thing is quoting books. So actually reading them, actually trying to understand them. If you don't want to pick up a book on the subject, I want you to really question if you even want to do that subject, because when you were younger, especially, you kind of want to show off a little bit, but you have to think, is this coming from ego, or am I actually interested in it? Bit of a side note. And another thing about passion is, yeah, I would say mainly that. Debate as well. Economics is a very nuanced social science, so I showed that through debate. I did a presentation for my math society on game theory by I think his name is something Nash. But yeah, so that's how I kind of showed that I was really interested in economics, specifically behavioral economics, by books and also a presentation at my school society. You don't have to have work experience to show that you're passionate, by the way. It's really, really difficult to get experience, especially these days, which I understand. So you won't be discredited for not having experience as long as you are able to write well and you're able to showcase that. The second thing, flexibility. So economics is a very, very, very versatile degree, which is why I did it, because you can go into banking, you can get into finance, you can get into government work, you can get into business. Another thing as well that I want to say is a lot of companies, and by a lot, I probably mean 95%, don't really care what degree you do, as long as you get a good grade in it, and as long as it's kind of STEM or it's something that requires critical thinking and analytical skills. So you don't have to do accounting and finance, for example, to get into banking. You don't have to do, you can get into anything as long as it's a subject that has these skills. So I wouldn't worry too much about the degree, but just do something that you're interested in and you can actually keep at it for 2-3 years, because it's better to do that than do something that you don't really like because it sounds good, which is what I did when I chose economics with accounting at clearing, because it sounded really good and then I ended up hating accounting. So yeah, don't do that just because it sounds good. Does that help?
I think that's really good advice, Bavisha. And so I think there are three of us that started one degree and ended up doing another one. So, you know, it's obviously not that uncommon. So, and Anne-Marie, I know you had a couple of other questions. So if you do want to put your microphone on and ask them directly, please do that now. Otherwise, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that we had earlier on in the session. Okay, so we had one about, oh, hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi, yeah, I wanted to ask more, I think both Abdullahi and Bavisha, do you like think with AI, it's like a prominent thing in the market right now, do you think it's going to affect like jobs, and especially in the economic sector and finance sector?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I got really excited there. I've got a blog about this. There's this book by Rajesh, I've got it here, Shrivastava, and he's been in the corporate industry for about 40 years, and he speaks about the 10 life-changing skills that AI can't replace. So this talks about creativity, critical thinking, like just being, humans can never replace AI. They can replace a lot of jobs, and this will be jobs in the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector, but they will never replace all jobs. So there's blue collar jobs and there's green collar jobs. So they speak about this in the book. I've got a blog on it, so I will post that today actually as well. But no, please don't be afraid. It won't replace all jobs, but definitely be mindful of the fact that AI is obviously transforming a lot of industries. So maybe choose something AI related if that's what you're worried about, but it will not replace all jobs. Definitely do your research. But if it's mainly admin or system based, then yeah, it can replace it. But I think we are still quite a long way away, and it's not like it's not the generation of boomers where careers were linear, like they went up like this anymore. Now it's like zigzag, like it goes all the way. So you can work from marketing to banking. You can go from banking to, like, for example, I went from an economics degree to sales to business development to teaching, and I've got my own teaching business. Like, the world is your oyster. Don't be scared. For every solution, for every problem, there's a solution. So yeah. Sorry. I got excited there.
Thanks, Bavisha. Abdullahi, did you want to say something about AI?
I think Bavisha made a very compelling answer. I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think even on the off chance that, in the future something does happen, I think you'd be much better in the shoes of somebody that graduated, so then you can pivot into something else. Because like she mentioned that careers are very zigzag, or there's a lot of cross-industry job hopping that people do. So I know that because there's always something popular at the time. So right now it might be, I know a couple years ago, it was entrepreneurship or stuff related to that field, and now it might be more tech related. You got a lot of people moving to the tech industry. So I think so long as you're adaptable, you shouldn't fear it. Just be confident that you'll be able to figure out in a sense.
Really good advice, Abdullahi. Thank you. Tiwa, I don't know if you want to give a perspective from the legal side on AI.
Yeah, I can. I would say that in terms what I've seen, what AI, because even in my workplace right now, they're developing an AI that kind of assists with what we're doing. So I believe that AI is more assistance. I think it helps with assistance more than actually taking over the role, from what I see anyway. So yeah, again, on the off chance, like Abdullahi and Babisha said, on the off chance there is ways to pivot, but I think a lot of employers do know the importance of AI is definitely to assist more than take over, because I believe that no one can really do a lot of the roles what a human can do. A human touch is needed to an extent. So yeah.
Thank you. And also, I think you were talking about intellectual property rights earlier, weren't you? And I think the issue of AI is key there at the moment, where creatives, as Abdullahi mentioned and Bavisha mentioned, are, really in a battle now with AI in terms of their intellectual property rights. And, there's got to be there's going to be a few debates about this. My answer actually is a little bit what Abdullahi said, but basically I'll sum it up in a little phrase. So, fail to plan to fail is one. The other one I would say is if you can't beat them, join them. As an example of careers or potential careers that aren't necessarily related to your degree. So I did a social sciences degree with a specialism in social policy. I was looking at housing policy, health policy, a little bit of economics, lots of various things. I actually, last year, we developed an app for migrant leaders. So I was working with app developers. The year before that, I set up our database. So working again with developers on customer relationship management systems. So quite a lot of tech in my job now, even though I have a social sciences degree. But, those are skills that you pick up through the work that you do. And you kind of soon realize that actually you maybe have a good instinct for X, Y, or Z, and then your career develops down that way. I found in practically every single job I've done, I've ended up doing some sort of tech secondment or tech project, obviously because I have an affinity for it, even though I might not love it, although I probably do love it because I'm a bit of a geek. So can I move on? I know we're running over. We were due to finish at 12:30. We've got a few more questions that I really would like to cover. So whilst we're talking about those, I will just mention, please look in the chat. I've put in 4 links to our Google Drive with some what I hope are useful documents for you. There's one is just a simple template for you to use to develop an action plan. So you can make plans for things over the summer to build up your experiences. So you might want to do a MOOC. You might want to look at your study methods. Are you using the right methods to help you get ready for your final A-level exams, that sort of thing? There's a thing there about student characteristics to help you think about the skills that you might want to develop so that you can talk about those in your personal statement. There's a guidance thing on active learning, which some of the things that Bavisha touched on. And the final thing is just a little guidance document that I've written with the help of AI, in terms of modernizing it and giving you the new information about structure. So, it does come in useful because I originally wrote this document about 3 or 4 years ago. It's our little tips on UCAS, so tips on your personal statement. And just one more point I would make on the personal statement, as Abdullahi mentioned, make sure you're familiar with the dates that you need to be aware of so that you make the deadlines. So just having covered those practicalities, a couple of questions that I'm going to answer, but guys, Abdullahi, Bavisha, Tia, if you want to chip in, please feel free to do so. So there was a question about interview anxiety and how you deal with that. 3 things I would say: practice, practice will always help you. So if you've got somebody in your family, or you've got a neighbour or a friend or a teacher at school that can help you practice your subject area, then that will give you confidence. Really be familiar with your subject area so that you're able to answer questions. So again, that you will test that by practicing. And if you don't have a mentor, try and get a mentor through Migrant Leaders. Hopefully you're a mentee with Migrant Leaders already. If you're not and you've done an application, let's get that processed. But do a mock interview. So try and get somebody to do a mock interview where you're actually in interview environment, in interview circumstances. So a little bit of formality, but practice is key there. Just try. The other thing I would say, the other tip I would say is either with a mirror, your phone, recording yourself, or just, have yourself a little solo Zoom meeting, talk to yourself, record it, and then play it back. And then you'll be able to pick up on where maybe you're hesitating, where you don't want to hesitate. Maybe you don't say things as clearly as you'd like to say. So if you record yourself, that will help you overcome some of those anxieties. The other thing I would say is, a little bit of nerves is always good. It avoids complacency. So, if you are nervous, don't worry about being nervous, because everybody's nervous about a lot of things. There are a couple of questions from Mike about, should you give multiple, sorry, Tira, did you want to come in on that? Okay, so a couple of questions from Mike about personal statements. So there was one about multiple examples. If you've got multiple examples, that's great. Thing is, remember what I said earlier on, make sure they're relevant to the degree you want to apply for. And you also need to keep within your character limit. So if you do a list of your examples, or you write a little paragraph in Draft Now about each of those examples and how you want to add it, then you count the characters. If you're using Word, use Word to draft your personal statement first. Anyway, you can count the characters, and then you can see how much space that's taking up. And also, you really need to be really objective and a little bit brutal in terms of, is this really relevant to the degree I want to apply for? So you might have lots of examples, but choose carefully which ones you share. And your other question was about different types of engineering degrees. Some are very specific and some are general. And this also touches on if you want to apply for a joint degree. Look for the areas, look for the subjects, the language rather, that covers common areas between either your joint degree subjects or different types of engineering degree. I think that's all I can say. You really need to be a little bit smart about, if you're going to apply for one very specific degree but 3 or 4 general degrees, then make your responses proportionate in that way. So focus on the general, but if you're looking at aeronautical engineering, then maybe use an aeronautical engineering example as one of your show, rather than tell examples of evidence in your personal statement. I hope that helps. The time frame for experiences, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Artyom. Again, with that one, be careful what you choose. Make sure it's relevant to the subject you want to study. And I would say more recent is better if it's relevant. But I mean, one of the things I was looking at, quite often people will say, oh, I've wanted to be a doctor ever since I was a child, or I've wanted to be a lawyer ever since I wanted to be a child, or I doubt they'll say I wanted to do double entry bookkeeping. Hang on, I'll start that sentence again. I doubt they'll say I wanted to do double entry bookkeeping since I was a child. I hope nobody would say that. Some people might, but make sure that you make it relevant and make sure it's authentic. So don't pick vague examples. Make them relevant to the degree you want to apply for, and then try and show if that really emphasizes a depth of interest, a really passion for that subject, and never ever say I have a passion for anything. It's, as Abdullahi said, that was a really good phrase, Abdullahi, which I'm going to steal from you: show, don't tell. Okay, any other questions? Just one more that I know you covered a bit, Bhavisha. There was one about which skills help most for different subjects and assignments, but I think one of your slides showed that. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I can do. My main takeaway was going to be for humanities and essay subjects, active recall, spaced repetition, blurting, like very much qualitative information. But when you get to STEM, which is maths and science, the focus a lot is on exam. So you kind of just have to, I would say, maybe specifically maths, but it's just exam focus, I would say. For maths, there's not really much. I wouldn't say it's very effective to make posters, for example, or understand the theory. It's just very much practice, practice, practice different questions. I made posters for maths, which I think I did because it made me feel good. So just because something feels like you're revising doesn't mean you're actually revising. So make sure that you actually do questions for maths, chemistry, physics as well. So yeah, I'd say just have a bit of common sense when you're revising for certain subjects, because it will depend on if they're essay subjects or more exam and numbers focused, if that helps.
Thanks, Bhavisha. And we've got one more question coming from Jigisha, which will make the last question, if that's okay. Should you include loads of technical language, go into loads of detail about books you've read in the specifics of physics? I'm applying to physics for reference. I mean, they do say don't use jargon, but obviously you need to demonstrate a certain amount of understanding of physics concepts and theories. So firstly, I would say take advice from somebody that's a specialist in physics. So if you have a counsellor or a teacher at school who will be able to give you a bit more guidance on that specifically. I'm not a physicist. I actually didn't even do GCSE equivalent of physics. I dropped it after third year at school, when we used to have third year. I'm that old. So yeah, take some guidance from a specialist. I would say don't go overboard with the technical language and the technical examples, because do you remember what we were saying about earlier on? One of us said something about big yourself up, but you're not showing off. The number of things that you add isn't going to demonstrate your depth of knowledge. It's the depth of knowledge, so the quality of the information you're including, as opposed to the quantity of the information you're including. So long as you make your minimum character number, then really think about the quality of your writing as opposed to the quantity of examples that you're putting in there. I hope that helps. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much to all of our speakers. I think you've all done a fantastic job and been very generous in sharing your experiences, your knowledge and your wisdom with our students today. Thank you to all the students for joining us and bearing with us through the overrun. Just goes to show to me that hopefully you've learned a lot and you've gained a lot from this session. So thank you very much again. And with that, I shall say enjoy the rest of the sunny afternoon, and we will post the recording in due course. Thank you. Bye.